Hello and welcome to Escape Forward, the space where I have the privilege of talking to friends beyond my original realm of competition policy about anything else that is interesting, industrial policy, trade, US, and particularly tech policy. We are going to have a number of conversations around AI, the topic of the moment. And it is absolutely clear that this massive revolution and the way in which Europe is going to position itself in it will be pretty much make or break for the continent. And the AI conversation globally, but in Europe in particular, has multiple strands. Of course, we won't be able to discuss them all today, although I have a very versatile guest who's able to talk about almost anything in this space. But we'll pick a few particularly salient themes, something which is of global interest, the whole discussion around end of work apocalypse, is AI going to kill the labor market, and in a related way, the end of software, what does that mean, the power of agentic AI. We're going to have a conversation about what is the position that Europe should take in all of this, what should Europe bet on, sovereign AI, sovereign industrial AI, and then to conclude a discussion around power, which is very salient again in this space, governance, the role of regulation, and so on. Of course, there are other things, many more, but we are not going to have time to discuss them all. But I'm especially delighted to have with me to discuss all of this Luis Garicano, who is someone who's been defined in another setting as not your usual academic economist. Although he is a fully fledged academic, he is a professor at the London School of Economics. He was also for 3 years a member of the European Parliament, so he's had the opportunity to see how the policy sausage is made from the inside, and is most importantly for our purposes, someone who has written and speaks and talks very extensively about AI. He has a very popular column Substack called Silicon Continent, which has a huge following, and he's writing a book which is coming up in May, I believe.
I hope so.
Hope so. On one particular aspect of the whole discussion, and this is really where we're going to start. Luis, welcome.
Thanks very much.
And just to break the tension, your book is going to be called Messy Jobs, and you can tell us about the book in the course of this discussion. But I want to start framing the issue a bit, particularly right now. The labor market implications of the AI revolution are very much being centered to discussion. There has been a serious paper that's been published at Stanford, Brynjolfsson and others, called Canary in the Coal Mine. This has done the rounds. It's a very well-known paper, which is the first in-depth study of the impact of generative AI on labor markets, and it does show, based on extensive data, that the younger generation is disproportionately being affected by the AI impact. Then there has been in the news a number of pronouncements from Daria Modei, Anthropic, from Mustafa Suleyman at Microsoft AI, again loading this notion that we are going to see extinction of certain types of white-collar jobs in the next 1 to 5 years. All of this will disappear. And of course, it's echoed very broadly in the policy dimension. There was a posting by Alexandra Giese, the MEP, the Green MEP, who went in depth into the implications that can be seen in the statistics in Germany. She says in February, more than 61,000 IT professionals registered as unemployed in Germany, up 23% from the previous year. Posting for computer science masters have collapsed by 46% since 2023, and so on. So she's describing the situation in Germany as pretty serious. Jan LeCun and yourself, Jan has said, these Amodei and Suleiman things don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. It's pretty nonsensical. And you have been, I'm coming to you, quite vocal. You have one issue of Silicon Continent last week that's really responding to this and anticipates the arguments in your book. So let me give you the floor why do you disagree with this? And I take that your take is also different from the one of Alex Imas, who says, well, if everything is going to become so cheap, if the marginal cost of doing all of this is going to decline, then we're going to see a shift towards more relational employment types. So, you're going to see more nurses and personal trainers and so on. And that's not also a take that you agree with. Take it away and tell us how you see it.
Okay, that's a broad question. I'll try to do my best. So first on the position of our overlords, tech masters of the world, the Darío Amodei and company. So I think they understand technology much better than either of us, or much better than anybody. So I'm not going to dispute their view on technology. But I honestly think they have no idea what people do in their jobs all day. They have no idea. They think that a project manager is somebody who's staring at Gantt charts, and they don't realize, a constructor, when you've done some renovations in your home, somebody who comes in and tries to get the electrician to work together with a carpenter who hate each other and they want to come at the same time, and he's trying to solve conflicts and he's trying to get stuff done and trying to get the project moving. There is a lot of work that is not digital information processing. So the point of my message jobs and the point of the article last week on Silicon Continent was to say, look, there are two basic types of jobs that are kind of, quote, let me call them safe, and two basic ideas on how we should think about what is safe. One's indeed Alex Imas' idea, which he posted in a beautiful post in his own blog. Which talks indeed about the demand side. It's like the demand for humanness. Human beings will always want work done by humans. Hence, there will be artisans, and you think of Japan. In my book, we talk about the 𝗀𝗶𝗹𝗶, right? People don't want the perfect ceramic, which is obviously being done by IKEA, and not to disparage the ceramic here. They want the ceramic which has some imperfection that shows the humanness. So that's one side. And I agree with Alex that jobs, as the price of the digital services compresses, the sectors that are human intensive expand, because the income of people goes up and people want to spend in that kind of thing. We know it empirically. People, when they grow richer, they want to spend in holidays, in restaurants, in vacations, in things that are human effort intensive. But also because the relative prices change. The electricity revolution meant lighting became free. Illumination was basically free. And so a sector that was very important now doesn't consume anything. The agricultural revolution means agriculture is free, and the income gets reallocated to the other sectors. So that's one argument, and it's a good argument. The argument I'm making in messy jobs is a different one. It's the supply side. And it's indeed about, regardless of whether people have a taste for humanness, there is a lot that human beings do. And I basically talk about two aspects which I think are important, and I call this messy jobs overall. One, by the way, the book is with two colleagues from Hong Kong University. One's my PhD student, Jianhui Wu, who's now chair of the department there, and the other one's Jin Li. So one is the idea of weak and strong bundles. So jobs are not just individual tasks that you take out the task and the job just disappears. Jobs are bundles of tasks. There are a lot of things that go into being a radiologist. So the example that we start the book with is the famous Geoffrey Hinton prediction of 2017. Oh, don't do radiology. There won't be radiologists anymore in the future. Why? Because he thinks the job of a radiologist is to stand all day staring at X-rays and deciding, yeah, this is cancer, no, this is not, etc. That's not the job, right? The job involves talking to the other doctors about the diagnosis, talking to the patients. It means deciding on treatment plans. It decides on training of juniors. There is a lot that goes into the job. And there's a lot of shared context. So when you take the diagnosis out, you don't just empty the job of content. The content's still there. So a strong bundle that holds together, is a set of tasks that even when you automate one of those tasks, it doesn't fall out. It continues being part of the job, part of the bundle. And as a result, automating that task doesn't mean the job gets weaker and less useful. It actually gets complemented and stronger. So that's the first idea, the idea of strong bundles and how technology makes a strong bundle actually more productive. The second idea has to do with authority and has to do with implementation of decisions in organizations. Why do we meet all day? Why do we have, what is it that this contractor that I was talking about at the start is talking about? What is the manager in the company doing? Yes, partly it's processing information and part of it is going to get solved. But we make this experiment to our readers. Think of the morning run at 8 o'clock in the morning. Let's say someone who's listening to us, Cristina, is a parent. And suppose you have the best AI in the world and you're a parent. What is the AI going to do? Well, it's maybe going to schedule your day better. It's going to send some emails to the teachers about kid being sick or whatever. Fine. Is your 8 o'clock morning run going to be different when the kid just starts stumbling and saying, I'm not going to the swimming pool? What do you do as a manager of the household? You talk to the kid, you tell her, hey, come on, yes, we're going swimming. You need to continue swimming. You then, other crisis happens and you go running into the kitchen because the milk has been spilling over. Well, there's a lot that is going on that is not information processing, that is solving conflict, using the authority, taking responsibility for the decisions, being there. And a lot of that authority has to do with contracts that are incomplete. Nobody really ever can take the LLM. Here are the things that will happen because nobody knows what the world is going to look like. It has to do with things that are hard to enforce. It has to do with relationships and trust. You cannot buy trust. I come here because I know you and you know me and you know I'm not going to say, or I know you're not going to ask, whatever it is. There is a long relationship that you don't buy and you don't sell and the agents don't have. So all of those things together make the job messy and mean that this view of Amodei as, the consultant is somebody who just clicks PowerPoints. That's not what a consultant does.
So let's challenge this because, of course, I do hear you, and of course I agree with much of what you say. But agentic AI is evolving incredibly fast.
True.
And it's kind of doubling its capabilities every 2-3 months. And I know people who are today doing things that were unthinkable 6 months ago. They're running an entire business with an AI agent. And it's not just the process flow and the well-defined tasks that are being taken by the agentic AI. This is all sounding very sci-fi. But I know that there is a view out there that goes beyond the notion that what you can automate is process flows. That actually the agentic AI is going deeper and deeper into the tasks and will be soon able to also optimize across these more complex decisions. So what I'm seeing is that there is an incipient and very unknown world in which these capabilities are developing. Of course, if you look at the last year and a half, we've gone incredibly fast from just using ChatGPT at work and asking a few questions to process flow automation to now going into this unknown in which you have models that can create marketplaces in which conflicts are resolved. I'm not sure that is happening today, but I hear a lot of people who are saying this is around the corner. It's pretty much now. How do you see the capability of the tool?
What we have seen since Christmas with Cloud Code and Codex, the move from chatbots to agents, as that you're pointing out, is a nose. Okay, and those who are also doing research use it as a tool every day, and we keep being blown away by what it can do. As you said, in situations of ambiguity, in situations where judgment is required, you give it enough context, you ask it to make a good decision, it tends to make a good decision. There are limitations, even if the context windows grow. The context window is the amount of stuff that you can cram into the current working memory of the system. Even if it grows, the truth is these things still don't learn. So you first program the LLM, then you deploy it. You don't actually have a machine that is continuously learning. Yann LeCun famously has been very critical of that kind of feature. And also, they don't learn from the word. They learn from the words. They learn from our words. They learn from text. So they don't yet have what is called world models. So there are limitations, but I don't think that's the part that I want to emphasize as much. the part which I mean, both of those limitations mean there is going to be context, and there is going to be
friction.
There is going to be a lot that the humans will have to add. What I want to add is, as long as you have a human organization, you're gonna need a human to make a decision, and you're gonna have, as long as you have unforeseen contingencies, you're gonna have somebody who's gonna have to decide which way are we going to turn. And it's not the point of many of these decisions is that there is not necessarily a better or a worse decision. This is a judgment call. Are we going to go in this direction or in that direction? Well, it's going to depend on, I think of a country deciding to go to war or not, which is kind of the ultimate human decision, right? You could say, well, the AI should do it. Well, there's a lot of judgments that have to do with what our preferences are as country, and it's not going to be just process information and come up with a decision. And maybe the AI is going to give this decision maker a lot of information, and maybe it's going to run how the troops are going to deploy in battle. But there is a decision that is irreducibly human. So to me, as long as the future is unknown and as long as the contingencies are foreseen, we have this irreducible role for humans in being the one where the buck stops, where the decision is made. The entrepreneur, if you tell the LLM, make a good justification for this argument, is going to make you a great justification for route A. And if you ask it, make a good one for route B, it's going to make it. And you're going to have to make a call. Are we going to go A or B? So unforeseen contingencies will continue to exist. Human conflict will continue to exist. You can say, well, what about an organization that's purely agentic, a top manager with lots and lots of agents? Yes, that can exist. And I think we will see a lot of one-person companies, right?
Right.
You can be your own person running the accounting AI and the finance AI and the marketing AI and making lots of decisions. At the end, there's going to be a human who's going to make those decisions. And I think that it's going to be interacting with other humans, because the economy only creates value to the extent that it's serving humans. So I think that's at the end, those are the reasons that I think that the agents are going to be fantastic, but they're going to have limitations.
We look forward to reading the book.
Yes.
So it's not the end of work as we know it, but let's narrow it down. Is it the end of software? We have seen software extinction, or at least predictions of that. Shares have fallen because essentially we seem to be going from a world in which writing software, writing code was a thing. It was also something that was, of course, demanding and clunky and was bespoke, and it did require a lot of human hours. And this is now shifting into a world where the production of code essentially has zero cost. And that is going to mean obviously quite a lot for people in this sector.
Yes, I think that there is a recent March 26th Federal Reserve article which didn't see, I don't think we are seeing drops in jobs, even in jobs that you would think they should be dropping a lot, like travel agents. Recent Stripe economics team. Yeah, we're not seeing a lot of drops even in those, but we don't see increases. So you mentioned the canaries in a coal mine. There's been a lot of discussion, as you know, about did it start counting already the jobs that were falling because of the big COVID. During COVID, a lot of digital jobs were hired that were not as necessary when we went back to the real economy. There is discussion there, but there is a Federal Reserve article from I think one of the authors, Crane, from March, that talks about 500,000 less coding jobs that there would have been. It doesn't say we have lower coding than before. It says that the trend has broken. So I think that's fair. And I think that the point you're making is correct, which is, and I agree with that point, which is to the extent that companies depended on making complex software that was integrating lots of things, that's kind of going to be much less. That competitive advantage they had is going to be much less strong. The competitive advantage is going to have to be on, do they have some lock-in from customers? Do they have some data? If they have some data layer below the software, then they continue to exist. I mean, Bloomberg, for example, just to give one example, Is it just a set of tools on a lot of data that is commonly available to everybody? If that's what it is, then Bloomberg will not be able to charge a lot for the terminals. The ones that have lock-in will persist. I mean, to me, an example is my most hated piece of software, which is Outlook. When people talk about agentic AI, I ask them, do you really think Microsoft, rather than automating like Suleiman thinks and Amodei think, 50% of the jobs will go in 2 years? Do you think they'll fix Outlook in 2 years? I mean, we're waiting for them to fix Outlook for like 2 decades. And that hasn't happened. My Outlook is worse than it was 2 decades ago. So they have a competitive advantage. Why? Because my company, in this case, the London School of Economics, doesn't allow me to pull my Outlook email and put it in Gmail like it allowed me 10 years ago. And so I have to be on Outlook. There is a competitive advantage. It's sustainable. It has to do with, corporate acquisition policies. Those things change slowly. And I think that's part of what Aria Amodei and company don't understand. Implementation is a huge barrier. There are many police departments. I did a long study on police departments. I had all the data from all police departments in the U.S. in 2010 about their IT acquisition. Some police departments had used the IT to make CompStat, geocode crimes, deploy policemen, get better crime solved. Many police departments haven't. And the reason they hadn't done it was, they're humans making these decisions and they are not changing the way they do things. We could have electronic administration like in Estonia, and we don't. So a lot of those obstacles have to do with barriers that are not technological. It's not just, is the software, can you do a better email program than Outlook? For sure, you can do it tomorrow. Why is Microsoft entrenched? This is stuff that you are an expert in as a competition expert. Well, for many other reasons that have nothing to do with the software being marvelous. So we're all loving it.
Quite. No, that's well put. Let's move to the next subject, because I think this is a discussion also that is very, very central in Europe right now. The next topic is really what can Europe do and where should it really throw its weight when it comes to AI? I think you and I completely agree that the race for LLM is lost in Europe. We are not going to be saved by Mistral, deserving as it is as a company, and we love it and we love to see it, but the LLM race is over. There is a narrative that is very predominant, very relevant in Europe right now, and it has percolated all the way to the political sphere, which is, okay, well, we lost that one, but we are going to win at the industrial AI battle. We, indeed, in Europe have special capabilities which come from our tradition. We are incredible engineers, we have machinery, we have mechanical capabilities in pharma and all that. If we combine those unique assets that we have with the capabilities of AI, it won't be an LLM. It will be a narrow model, it will be a bespoke, it will be a next generation model which will use industrial data. Then we can power ourselves up in the areas where industrial AI will be important, robotics and everything else, and we will win that race. And that's, I want to hear your views on that, but there's also one additional step, which is, and we're going to call it sovereign AI because it's European. And that's the bit which I think is fuzzier, because we can combine, I think, industrial types of models of this nature with our capabilities, but it doesn't mean we are setting up new platforms and new models for the foundational level. So when we talk sovereign, what sovereign are we talking about here? The discussion on sovereign is about something I'm very involved in, and it is about, well, let's create the foundation for the infrastructure. That kind of vision is not foundation infrastructure, is essentially building sovereign applications.
Yes.
Please just expand on that, because that's very, very important.
I think it's very important. I think, let me start from the end, which is where we do have an advantage. I agree with you. We have the possibility of winning the implementation race because we have very good data on health, we have very good pharma companies, we have very good engineering and mechanical engineering companies, and we have that data. Now, I think that's a race we can participate and we can win, and we should focus on that. But let me now go back to the beginning of the layer, to the lower layer. So the infrastructure starts with a machine which only Europeans can make. Great, ASML. We make the machine that makes every single chip in the world. The one that actually etches the ultraviolet, with extreme ultraviolet light, the silicon. This is made in the Netherlands. So you could say, okay, we have the beginnings of something. We cannot really leverage that. The reason we can't leverage that is because a lot of the technology that goes into this machine is American. A lot of the patents are American. The light source that goes into this machine is from Citrix, a San Francisco company, San Diego company. We cannot really leverage that. So let's go to the next. If we try to leverage that, Americans would just, it's not going to happen. Next layer, we have the chips, and the chips are NVIDIA and TSMC. We are nowhere in that race, sadly.
Do you not see, just as an aside, any opportunity for Silicon Saxony? Do you not think that Germany will say, hell, we need to invest now in chips for cars and self-drive cars, and we'll need to power that up? Do you think it's still impossible?
I was driving an Audi for 10 years. I mean, a beautiful piece of mechanical engineering. I had to get rid of it and not promise not to drive it again, because they were trying to use their own software. They weren't trying to just let you plug the Android. They didn't want to be a dumb pipe. So they said, no, we're not going to be a dumb pipe for Android or for Apple. We're going to have our own software. And to be honest, they never managed. And to my knowledge today, they haven't managed yet.
Yeah.
I have been in the Mercedes of a very high-ranking German official recently who gave me a ride to a conference. And the driver was complaining about this software that never finds the way. You're like, okay, let me use my Google Maps. So
chips, yes.
Chips and software is not necessarily something we are going to be able to do. The levels of investment, I think, when we talk about chips and we talk about the foundation layer. So chips is NVIDIA makes the design, and some others are doing it as well. Google, etc. TSMC manufactures them in Taiwan. That's kind of Samsung as well. That's kind of, we should be able to do something at least at some of that, but we can't because of the levels of investment. And then comes the foundation layer. The foundation is the LLM, the actual OpenAI, ChatGPT for our list.
Well, there's the data center.
And then there's the data center where this foundation layer is running. You're right. One more layer. Let me just go to the LLM 1 second. The LLM race involves training and inference. Training these models requires enormous investments in data centers. We're talking about between 4 of these companies that are investing $600 billion. If you remember, I don't know if the announcement should be believed at this point. I think it probably should. The Stargate investment was just one data center. One investment was $500 billion. To give our readers, to our listeners, a sense of the order of magnitude, that's like 4 times the entire public and private R&D of all of Europe. It's much
unfathomable.
It's unfathomable. I mean, you couldn't start. I mean, when you hear Europe talking about, yes, we're going to put 10 billion on this, 5 billion on that, we're not in that race. We cannot think. I mean,
I think that's done.
Yeah, that's that. Okay, so let's take that as a given. So what can we do? What we can do is we can ensure these models are interoperable. You were there at the start of the wars of the social media wars. Imagine if the network graph that I have on Twitter, which obviously I'm not, I keep calling it Twitter. That's my
we all
little
do. We all do.
That I could just move it somewhere else to Blue Sky. That was my graph. It was not owned by them, but mine. If this was interoperable, the market power of this industry would be very different, because I could just send a message. People could see it from Facebook. They could see it from Meta. They could see it from Blue Sky. They could see it from the WhatsApp, whatever it is. The whole market power situation would have been very different. We really messed up that race. Now the incumbents are extracting enormous rents just by being incumbents. I mean, if you think of Uber, who's providing a huge service to Europe, there's no question about it, by actually allowing you to find a place to move from one place to another in Brussels, which was impossible, for example. But it's extracting, siphoning all these profits because we're allowing them. It's just like literally monopoly rents. There's nothing special in the platform. We have to avoid that. So interoperability is crucial. This is easier with LLMs because when you see what a skill is or what any markdown file is for one of those LLMs, it has what is called an API call. The API call says, go to this model, send this, and come back. You can just literally just change the API call from model A to model B, and everything can continue. So we have to ensure that interoperability, we have to ensure that competition. And if we ensure there's competition at that layer, at that LLM layer, and we ensure these data centers are encrypted and they are local. We have a lot in Spain now in the Iberos, how do you call that river? The Ebro River in Spain. And we have quite a few. They are Azure and Amazon Web Services, by the way. They are not European, but they're in European soil. Imagine they're encrypted. Imagine they're local. And then we put all our efforts in developing this implementation layer. It's what I'm calling, with a colleague called 𝗀𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗁 𝗂𝗂𝗏, the smart second mover strategy for Europe. And what does the smart second mover mean? It means let's use our advantage in manufacturing, advantage in pharma, advantage in health data, our enormous public sectors, which, by the way, anyone who's gone to the US knows they work 100 times better than the US public sector. The US public sector can't get anything done. You still send your taxes in a piece of paper often. And use that to be the best ones at applications, at implementation, to use this data to conserve a competitive advantage. Success would be if our pharma companies can stay in Europe and do AI in Europe. Disaster would be if they have to move to New Jersey, because the only way to do pharma AI data is by moving to New Jersey. That would be catastrophic.
So let's unpack this, because there's so much in this.
Yeah.
I'm with you that at this point, we absolutely have an urgent mission as Europe, which is to implement at the fastest speed we can. And it seems as if industry, of course, is of course going there. I was mentioning to you, I was at an 𝗱𝗏 last week, and there was this gathering of all the 𝗀𝗏𝗏 of the German manufacturing, from Bosch to 𝗱𝗏𝗹 and the car companies and Siemens and so on, very much pushing this idea of industrial AI. We're going to be sovereign in industrial AI. But the idea indeed is implementation, application layer. And that seems to be something, of course, that everyone needs to push. The concern, though, remains, you start with a big premise. If we can ensure interoperability, and if we can ensure that all of this is benign, and if we can ensure that access to all of this foundation layer remains benign and possible, then we are off to the races. And indeed, in fact, I recommend your two Silicon Continent posting on this. You have one last July, I think, and one in March, which updates, but they're very thoughtful, and I agree with much of what you say. But let's not just kid ourselves. What we are saying is that ultimately the overlords remain the overlords, in the sense that the platforms and the models, which are going to be the foundation for all of this, remain what they are. And they worked incredibly hard to make them extremely attractive and fluid and so on. How will we avoid rent being extracted? You say, if we can ensure interoperability. We failed miserably.
We did.
With every attempt at ensuring interoperability in Web 2.
Yeah. We can't repeat that failure. I mean,
what makes you optimistic that we can?
So a couple of things. So let's talk about the one success, which is PSD2, which is the financial interoperability. So the banks are forced by European, or we often complain about European regulation, they are actually forced by a European regulation to share, if the customer gives the consent, the data of the customer with the startup, so that the startup can enter. So we did do it once, and we've had a very successful financial ecosystem. So it can be done. Now, the LLM race is very interesting because, first of all, we are seeing that the lock-in, I mean, I won't say it won't happen because memories might start developing, but the lock-in is not happening at all. Like, we go from like, oh, incredible what Gemini did. It's so far ahead. I remember in November,
And then you go to Claude.
And then, boom, 1 week later, Claude, and 1 week later, Codex, etc., etc. And this is changing all the time. The open models, in this case, sadly, many of them Chinese, are kind of 6 months behind. What these open weights models give you is they give you credible threats, right? It's not the frontier, and maybe the value of being the frontier is so enormous that 6 months is huge, but they keep at least the level playing field. They keep the ability of these guys to go to the sky with prices. They keep it limited because people have an alternative. To the extent that we have an open weight ecosystem, to the extent that, as I was saying, it's not as difficult to just change the API call. So to our listeners, the API call is, so the program here is just a piece of text. You just write text saying, do this, write in the style of Cristina Caffarra this text, and the thing does it. The API call is, which LLM are you going to use? And you give it your big encrypted key, and it goes, picks it up, and comes back. That particular thing is the one thing that you can just literally in one line change from one system to another. So I think that technologically and the way the race is evolving, it does look like switching costs are much lower than with the Facebook case where everybody wants to be, or WhatsApp, everybody wants to be sending WhatsApp on the platform where all their friends are in WhatsApp. Obviously, we would all wish that you could send your WhatsApp message and it arrives on the Telegram app of somebody else, but that didn't happen. I think it could happen here, both because of the nature of the technology, the way we are seeing the race evolving, suggests that it's clear there's gigantic value created by these people. You're right, they're doing a big effort to put good scaffoldings to make sure it works very well. It is not clear the value capture stays at that layer. And I think that difference, when you hear them talk, and they talk about how fantastic the systems are. Jensen last week in a podcast with 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗁, the CEO of NVIDIA, he was talking all the time value creation. I mean, this is really about value capture. And if Europe can be smart about the value capture, which I agree with you, I mean, we have failed. But let me remind you of two pieces of legislation that I've been critical with in the past, which are DMA and DSA. Those are two pieces that we haven't used that give us a lot of bargaining power if we want to use them. The fines that you can put under those pieces of legislation are very significant. So a lot of these things are tools that Europe has that it can deploy. Now, we know from Thunberg, Trump is not suffering European fools gladly. We're going to have to find our resolve, but this is existential for us.
So agreed that it's existential. I'm more interested, or at least more optimistic, in the potential for the technology to somehow prevent rents being sucked away in the way we've seen happening in the previous world. Because relying on regulation, I'm very much a skeptic, yes, and I am very much a pariah in Brussels for saying this. But look, the reality is, you say, and we can all say and stand here and cheer and say the DMA, DSA potentially are very lovely. They do nothing. They are still talking about Google search. Could they possibly give access to the search data? I mean, this was a problem that I addressed in 2012 when I was working for Microsoft on that very same problem. We're nowhere. We're nowhere with regulation, even before you get to Mr. Trump. So, I mean, I'm very radical on this, and I don't think regulation can take us there.
I am of a similar view as you.
Yes, but what you're saying is that the hope is that the potential for value capture from the handful of people who have put all of this into all of this investment into it might be lower if we are smart enough to actually create the condition for capturing that value ourselves through the applications.
Yes, I think that's what I'm saying.
Doesn't the resilience piece worry you? How exposed are we? Because, as you know, much of the narrative behind sovereignty is we're exposed to weaponization of that kind of layers. It can be something that's weaponized against us, by an administration that is not favorable to us. So we remain exposed to that.
Let me separate two things.
Okay.
So yes, I think we can do a lot. And let me just be clear on regulation. The main impact on regulation up to today has been to hamper European companies. So I've been very critical of the AI Act, the appendix, I think is 3, the Annex 3, which makes high risk every application of AI to education, to health, to many things. It's insane. GDPR has clearly hampered European companies without really doing much to help. So I think regulation has to be used to help Europe rather than to hamper it. We are not, the Brussels effect doesn't exist. We're not the regulator.
That was the dumbest thing ever.
The dumbest idea anyone ever came up with.
Oh my God.
This idea, for those who are not familiar, the Brussels effect is the idea that, we are so important. We put the rules for everybody. All the rest of the world will have to follow.
But that was so popular because, of course, it was flattering to the bureaucrats. If you're a sad bureaucrat and somebody blonde tells you have a sexy effect, then you are going to be very happy.
You are a member of the European Parliament and you're thinking, I'll do this rule and I'll rule the world. No, you won't rule the world. You'll just mess up Europe. That's what ended up happening. So on the regulation, that's my view. I was just saying we have tools that we can use in a bargaining game. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's a hard game. Now, just saying, let me put it in the most extreme way to make it sharp to our listeners, which is the kill switch, right? Are we not exposed to Trump tomorrow saying, you know what, you guys are relying on Azure and Microsoft, on Azure and Amazon Web Services and all these. I think 60% of European data is on those 3 big
more than that
American clouds, the Google, Amazon, Google. This possibility of like Trump just killing us in one go exists. And I think the most obvious one is payments. We all do our payments on MasterCard and Visa. And the Americans can literally, this is amazing, right? They just did it to a judge of the Hague who sadly found he couldn't use MasterCard and Visa. The Americans could literally say, you're no longer using payments. So imagine what that could be for the European economy. It's unthinkable, right? We have built our economies on the assumption that the Americans were our allies. If we have to think that the Americans are our enemies, a lot of what we're doing doesn't make any sense.
But this is at every level. I was speaking to the Danish pension funds.
Yes.
Of course, very concerned about Greenland.
Yeah.
And their assessment is that if there was weaponization of American bank towards them, like, for example, you cannot post collateral, your cash management becomes...
The lines of the Federal Reserve.
Weeks.
Yeah.
They have no life after 2 weeks. This is the level of dependence.
Yeah. The Federal Reserve traditionally, every financial crisis has given swap lines to everybody, which means you can get dollars basically in exchange for whatever currency you have. If we are in a world where in the next financial crisis the Fed says, like, you're on your own, we're not helping. These are things that are very harmful to the Americans as well, right? If they want to kill MasterCard and Visa, they can kill MasterCard and Visa. And if they want to kill the dollar, they can kill the dollar. If they want to kill Amazon, we have to...
But they don't have to kill, do they? There can be just some
threat,
degradation of functionality.
So I've been thinking a lot on this second mover. So let me just separate two things. So let's say we do need some sovereign cloud for certain government functions. Okay, I don't think we can run our defense on Azure. Okay, and it's true that Microsoft goes so deeply into our economies because everybody is on Outlook and on Office, and that means that everything is to some extent on the Microsoft cloud, even if they don't realize. But let's say that what I'm trying to say is all ministries are of Microsoft, whether they want it or not. But let's say that little by little we can move.
We are seeing it. We're beginning to see it.
We are beginning to see it. At least those functions out. Now, for the rest, we have to accept that we are relying on American clouds. What can we do to make that reliance less hurtful? So the sovereign clouds, not sovereign at all, that we're building in Spain, around the
sovereignty washing.
Those are not, because they're Amazon and Microsoft. But and indeed, it's Spain, it's Portugal, and it's the Nordics who are basically in this race simply because we have cheap energy, and the Germans, the French, etc. Whatever they want to do, it's not going to be as possible. You need solar or you need water, etc. We can at least make sure all the data is encrypted. We can at least make sure the data stays in Europe, and we can at least make sure that all of it remains movable from one cloud to the other. These are, as you very well know, easy things to say and maybe harder to do. But encryption, I think, is happening, and localization is a requirement that is right now in place. It is true that the 2018 Cloud Act in the United States allows the U.S. government to get access to all the data that is in these clouds. This is what Microsoft had to admit in front of the French Parliament under oath. Yes. There's no way around it. This is no way around it. This is federal law. They are an American company. They are going to... So there's no getting around it. Around this. There are no ifs, no buts around it. So let's... So that's why I think... the notion that we need some sovereignty, it's very dear to my heart, which is never going to be replacing. People use emotional words like decoupling. I'm not suggesting any of that, but we need to create some capabilities that are really local and not just washing. But let me. I think we are very much on the same line. I think that what I'm trying to say here is this. First of all, let's not shoot ourselves in the foot by making regulations as if we are the regulator of the world. That I think we should all agree. Let's not shoot ourselves in the foot by trying to invest in a technology we're never going to get. Let's focus all our efforts on the implementation layer and in interoperability. Is this a sovereign solution? No. Is this going to give us to me, if it gives us a solid shot at capturing value, that's sovereign enough for me. Well, because you go to the other point that we've discussed in the past, which is, to me, much of the discussion around sovereignty is not the kill switch, is about productivity growth, but it's productivity growth that we need to just ultimately power up. Yeah. And this gap in productivity growth between US and Europe is not going to be even narrowed if we don't invest also in our own stuff. And this is really the important point. We need to absolutely power up investment. And yes, at this stage, when it comes to it, it's probably going to be just application, as you say, I completely agree, not LLMs, but we need to invest absolutely urgently in to the extent that we can create layers or pieces of this infrastructure that are ours, it also contributes to that. Yeah, yes. But if the rents get extracted, that growth is going to go somewhere else. So yes, I agree with you. I mean, I am very much on that line with you, which is at the end of the day, it's about growing, creating prosperity for Europe, and creating prosperity to pay for our growing welfare states. I think the only countries that have growth as an objective in Europe right now, coincidentally, and I'm going to write about this hopefully this week in my blog, are the ones who are closer to the border with Russia. Those are the ones who are not thinking of, increase pensions. They are thinking of, we need to invest because we're in trouble. The further you are from Russia, the less you are into growth. Because they are like, let's just enjoy life. Is nice. Yes. Life is nice. But yes, growth is the objective, and AI is the tool that is going to deliver that productivity growth. That's the pitch. And the way to do it is with this implementation. So I very much agree. Last part of the conversation, but I think it's an important one. We haven't touched on it yet. You and I are on the same page. The important thing for Europe is growth. We need to just run at it. But there's a whole kind of school of thought that you know very well, which is about the notion that all of this structure is very worrying from the perspective of what world are we going into. So we know that this infrastructure is essentially funded and powered by a narrow set of oligarchs, and it's not just the traditional platforms that can be perceived as slightly more benign, the Microsoft or the Google with all the misdeeds.
But there is a whole generation of oligarchs that are, from Musk to Alex Karp to, Peter Thiel, and, all of that generation is perceived as being quite sinister and having quite sinister objectives in many ways. And there is a whole discussion out there about what kind of world are we getting into with this AI? Instead of democratizing the use of resources, we are essentially actually allowing governments to push them in the US in the hands of this very narrow oligarchy, which is going to use them for making enormous bets and enormous amounts of money in ways that are not necessarily good for the kind of world we want to live in. I hear all this, and, people like AI Now, people like Brian Merchant and Karen Ho, they're saying things that I relate to. The realist in me is like, it's over. This stuff isn't going to go back. I don't know what a handful of nice civil society think tank people are going to do to stop this, or how they're going to implement the governance they're talking about. This is my ultimate concern. When I hear people saying we need to prevent this from going in this direction, being removing agency from us and taking us back into further techno-feudalism, it's all very nice. But what exactly are we going to do with what tools? Because the regulators we have, not because of their own, they're nice people and they try hard, but we have shown we cannot regulate making pizza in the kitchen. So how are we going to stop or impose governance on this train?
So that's a great question. Let me give one very positive part of the LLM as it is and as I think it's going to develop. Social media was a very democratizing force. We could hear everybody, so we all thought this is going to make Arab Spring type, like the people power.
It didn't work.
It didn't work. And the reason it didn't work was not only because of the oligarchs running it, but because it allowed people to fragment it and it allowed everybody to have their own truth. One thing that we are noticing about LLMs is that it's very difficult to have a manipulative LLM which is useful. If these guys want to sell compute and intelligence, they need to bet on making these machines intelligent. When Musk tried to make his LLM anti-woke and political, he got this 𝗱𝗃 Hitler, remember? Which was this, there was a time at which Grok was saying
crazy stuff.
Nazi crazy stuff, and he had to shut it down. He discovered that if you try to put ideology into this thing, it's going to go into like this really deep end, which is not very useful for actually doing law or doing whatever it is that you need these machines to do. So LLMs might bring us back to a common shared view of what is true that is not necessarily a manipulative one, because what they do is they actually get their value from solving problems. And so in some sense, I think the LLM is a more benign technology that people believe. And I also think that some of the labs running this, like for example Anthropic, are if anything too concerned about all of these things. I mean, they've always been very concerned. They have a constitution. In fact, they're shooting themselves in the foot all the time by exaggerating the risks. So it's not necessarily the case that dark future is the one that is in front of us. I do share the view that there is a generation of kind of scary oligarchs that you mentioned. I don't think that the technology at the moment is going to give them the possibility of manipulating in the way that other technologies did. The solution is not regulation. It's the same that we went over when we talked about Europe. The solution is competition and interoperability. If we manage to keep this from tipping towards one system to rule them all, the Lord of the Rings magic ring, if we manage to keep to do our best to have the data movable, the APIs movable, and to have us able to continue to have choice, I think that is the best we can do in terms of governance.
I don't disagree, but the question is, what kind of competition can we have when ultimately, and they are telling us directly. I was reading the interview of Thomas Gurian, who is the head of cloud at Google, with Thompson, and he was emphasizing the massive advantages of integration that these companies have, because, of course, they are capable of running it. Now, also the cyber piece is integrated. Google was very smart. They bought Wiz. And at the time, I said, why isn't anyone saying anything? Because, of course, it's efficient for them to integrate Wiz and cybersecurity. It's a competitive advantage, which is what they should be thinking about. No one in DigiComp did a thing about this, but that's how it is. So the question is, we are in a world in which, yes, competition could save us, but we still have a very, very small handful of people with the resources, the lakes of data, the forests of GPU, the amounts of money, and they're in bed with each other, because you can see they're all buying from each other. So Google invests another X billion in Anthropic, and then AWS sits. So, if there is an interlocking directorate kind of structure, it's that one. And I just am not completely relaxed about that future.
I'm not completely relaxed. I see three advantages you mentioned, which could potentially be the source of monopoly power. Clearly, as you said, the security could be a big deal. Right now, the big advantage of the data centers is security, right? To run like Amazon Web Services or like Microsoft, to run thousands and thousands of instances of all of these programs of everybody without having data leaks. I mean, that's out of the reach for anybody. That there is no entrant who is ever going to replicate that. So security is a problem, and that's why I do think that the data center is very hard. The other switching cost could be memory. As these things start to remember you and know you, then you get stuck, and you are kind of it's hard to change. That's why, I mean, we need and the other one, of course, is data. If you have the data, you have the power. We do have the data in Europe, the health data. Think of our health systems, which are fantastic. Our manufacturing data we have. If the software layer gets commoditized, a lot of those advantages that you were talking about from Web 2.0 are going away, and it's going to be the data which is the advantage, to the extent that the Azure, AWS, the data centers are local and encrypted. The data is the advantage. We can rely on that, and to the extent that the LLM is competitive, we can rely on that choice. I think there is a scenario where Europe does move fast on the technology, and where we can keep the control of that final step. That is my hope. We are nowhere near where we should be in this race, because we've spent years kind of sabotaging ourselves. I think the biggest enemy of Europe is not the tech oligarchs.
Absolutely.
It's ourselves, who are just putting all the time stones in our own path. And we need to get our act together. If we do get our act together, I am very hopeful. I mean, we're not some little power. I mean, we're talking about that at the start. We are the second largest consumer market in the world. And we should not accept this slide into irrelevance, this slow death into the darkness. We are just accepting as if this is inevitable. This is not inevitable. I mean, Europe has been, for 400 years, the main innovation and technological power. I wrote this piece, Constitution of Innovation, with Ben Honson and 𝗱𝗏𝗍𝗂, where we were talking about how even in the late 70s, Europe was the main tech power in the world, in nuclear,
of course,
in planes with Airbus, all the technologies, cars, everything.
Now, this is why it is unfathomable.
Yeah,
because
50 years ago, we were the leaders.
But there is a power law which has meant every year we have sat on our backside in the last 15 years. Things have gone fast and we haven't caught up. But I like to end on this very positive note, because we are running out of time. We've run out of time. But I think you putting this point really sort of speaks to my heart, because I personally do feel very strongly that Europe is a superpower. We just need to act like one. And it is something I always say. So I think your hopeful note at the end, we may fail, but we don't have time to fail, and we shouldn't fail, and we should think in a positive way that we will make it, is the note I want to end on.
All right.
So this is a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Luis.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.